In money matters, the JSE All Share Index rose over 1% to touch a record high of 75,148 points this morning, lifted by commodity-linked sectors and tech stocks. For a sense of what is driving the markets at midday trade, we're joined now by Chantal Marx, Head of Equity Research at FNB Wealth and Investments. Chantal, always a pleasure. So this record high of over 1% so far today, how significant is this of a milestone, and what is driving this move?
Yes, I mean, reaching a new record high is always a big deal. But if we look at where the last record high was, it was only a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think we'll read too much into this specific record high event. In terms of the moves today, mostly taking cues from offshore. We had a very strong positive day in Asia overnight. So we're really taking our cue from there. A bit of more optimism around China, seeing commodity prices recovering quite nicely, that in turn driving the mining sector. And then, of course, Naspers and Process, also China being a very important market to them, contributing quite nicely to the gain today.
And speaking of commodity prices, gold prices easing in early trade as traders kept an eye out for U.S. inflation for any data clues. Have you seen any significant changes?
No, not really. I mean, on the commodity front, we're actually seeing most commodities trading higher. Gold, of course, tends to move higher during periods of uncertainty, and it really has run out of a bit of steam now. Just, I think yesterday we had Fed Chair Jerome Powell having a testimony in the Senate, and the market actually absorbed that quite nicely, and I think that's why you're seeing the gold price easing a little bit. In terms of the rest of the commodities space, most commodity prices are higher, and as I mentioned earlier, mining stocks also recovering quite nicely on the back of that. The standout, I think, today, Sasol actually on the chemical side, the Brent crude oil price also lifting, and that's supporting that specific stock.
Let's take a look at Glencore's purchase of a giant Colombian coal mine, which has cost the commodities trader much less than initially thought after prices of the fuel surge. Talk us through those developments.
Yeah, it's actually been quite an interesting story because they bought the mine from BHP and Anglo American, whose rationale was to actually start divesting out of coal because they are trying to become more ESG cognizant. Now, Glencore taking advantage of that, especially during a period where coal prices are quite high, for exactly that reason. Most investors are becoming more ESG cognizant, so they don't want to invest in something dirty like coal, which means that these assets are effectively on sale. This purchase closed yesterday, and I think it's probably going to be a really good one for Glencore, but it won't be a good one for them from an ESG perspective. But outside of that, from a cash returns perspective, it should probably support the investment case for the company.
And finally, Altron has announced that its CEO, Mteto Nyati, will step down at the end of June. How would you characterize his tenure?
He's had a fantastic tenure. It actually came as a bit of a shock because he was doing exceptionally well at Altron. But from what I understand, he has done what he wanted to do at the company, which in fact was to turn it around completely. Altron was in big trouble prior to his stint as CEO. Very high debt levels, struggling to have any sort of go-forward momentum in their industrial assets. He stepped in, cleaned up the portfolio and repositioned that company for growth. It now is one of the more exciting mid-caps on the JSE at the moment. And of course, they also recently successfully unbundled Bytes UK, which has continued to grow from strength to strength.
Chantal Marx, Head of Equity Research at FNB Wealth and Investments. Thank you. Always a pleasure.